Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everyone. So, welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about no jobs for student nurses in Jamaica. So, I have been doing a series on this and I've been talking about new grad nurses all across the world. So, for those who follow me assiduously, you may see that I have talked about Australia. No, not Australia. I talked about New Zealand, talked about United Kingdom, and now we've crossed over from New Zealand, we've crossed over to United Kingdom, and now we're down into the Caribbean basin. You know, I couldn't leave that one out. Tell me, we're specifically in Jamaica. So this has been a trending topic, a burning issue, and it's something that I think that is dire, and I'm passionate about it in speaking about the plight that new grad nurses are having, not just in Jamaica, but all across the world. Now, one of the reasons why I made sure to start and look at it on a global perspective, because I want persons to realize that some of the problems that you think that you have in your own country, there are actually other places. And for those that are watching, welcome to everyone that is tuning in. Welcome to those that may watch it after. So, welcome to everyone here. It is a wonderful Friday afternoon. And to those who are tuning in, please let me know where you're tuning in from. Drop in the comment section your name or where your flag or where you're from. Are you a registered nurse or you're just a regular viewer and you want to know what's up, what's the tea? So pardon me if my eyes look a little bit red. I was up last night watching the political debates in Jamaica, getting ready for an election. So I do have someone that's going to join us online. Hopefully she's able to. So we're going to talk about the new grads in Jamaica and the plight that they're having. So let me just type welcome in the chat for those who are here. All right, so we do see that new grad nurses are having difficulties. They can't get jobs after doing their courses for 4 years. And you have the 4-year degree program that is in Jamaica. We used to have the 2-year program, which is a diploma, but I think they cut it out and now they have a 4-year degree program. I actually think they should try and bring it back. So Observer published an article and we're going to pull that up and we're going to speak about it. We see it all over social media where the nurses are complaining that they can't find jobs. But I'm here to tell you that this is not new. When my time before I graduated, I've heard of nurses who were sitting at home, couldn't get jobs. The job market was saturated and they couldn't enter. And I think it does have a time when it chooses, when it does happen when nurses are unable to get jobs. But now it looks like it's getting worse. So on July 6, 2025, there was an article published by The Gleaner and it was entitled Jobless Nurses. So I am going to pull it up so we can see it a bit. Welcome to those who are joining. Guys, type in the chat and let me know who is here. Welcome to everybody. So Observer did make an article speaking on this. So jobless nurses. So it said that at the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a nurse who made a bold decision to leave her job of 12 years. I think she left her job of 12 years while working at the call center, what the article states. And then she decided to go into nursing. Some points that I picked out from the article was that she graduated after 4 years of college, which, you know, the 4-year degree programs that we talk about. And after that, it was a period of 9 months that she stayed at home and did not have a job. She noted in the article that she applied to several places and multiple places, but when I narrowed down and looked at it, she noted that she only applied to Clarendon and Manchester, and those are the parishes in Jamaica. And she realized that, you know, many of them, when she went there, she said she spent $10,000, traveled on public transportation, and then went out to drop off these resumes, and still no one called her back. After that, also, they were stating that they were full. Many persons were stating that they are not looking for nurses right now. They're looking for specialized trained nurses. And if you don't know, specialized trained nurses are nurses that are trained in a specialty. You have the general trained nurses. Once you leave university, you're general trained. Specialties would be like emergency nursing. You work in A&E, nephrology, or you work in orthopedics. That deals with those who have conditions with the bone, or you work in medicine, or you work in ICU. And that's what the government says they want right now. The article is quite long. I may not be able to go through it, but she said herself and her batchmates are still struggling to apply for jobs. Now, I want to reiterate what she noted is that it's hard to spend so many years doing a course like this and after completion, nothing. Some of us have student loans to pay, which are supposed to be starting to pay in September, right? So once you finish, student loan is knocking at your door. How do they expect us to pay for student loan when they don't provide us with any jobs? They don't tell us anything. Now, it was in the same article too. The minister, that is Mr. Tufton, did state that they're short on nurses and they're looking for specialized nurses like operating theater, crit care, nephrology, as I stated before. And they did interview the president of the NAG, and they said that they do understand that nurses aren't getting employment. And time has gone by when graduates would have been employed in temporary capacity after leaving school. That's where we'll have the grad nurses who would still be working as a grad nurse, took the license exam, but then waiting until they get their license. Now, that is no longer. Now, what I saw was that the NAJ said that they have advocated for training opportunities for local nurses, and at the same time, they are not categorically against international recruitment. Now, from this article, we can see, and for those who follow me, those in New Zealand are saying the same thing too. Those in the United Kingdom saying the same thing too. And one thing you can realize is that everybody is talking about the debt that they're in and student loans also. So it's not just in Caribbean people have to take out student loans. Nursing degree is one of the hardest and one of the most expensive degrees. So a lot of persons have to take out student loans for same. Now, with regards to this, why aren't the nurses getting jobs? Now, it's a systemic issue that I think when I look at it globally. I am back, my connection went. So why aren't the nurses getting jobs? So it's not just about that you will lack specialized nurses. It's not just the point that there are no nurses to employ. We have a surplus. And for many persons who don't know, I always say this, that Jamaica is an export factory. Jamaica actually produces more nurses than it actually needs. A lot of people might not agree with me, but let's do some maths. Major schools that you have in the Caribbean, Jamaica includes, you have UWI, UTEC, NCU, and then you have the community colleges. These are universities, right? They deal with batches. The least in a batch is about 200 or 100 per year. The major, and then the smaller community colleges, I think they may have like less than 100. No, we're saying that this is the export factory. Picture this. 3 universities putting out a batch of 200 per year. That's 3 twos. That's 600 nurses per year. How many hospitals do we have in Jamaica? You have main hospitals, Cornwall Regional, Spanish Town, you have UA, and then you have KPH, and then you have Andrews Memorial, and then some smaller hospitals and health centers. If every year our universities are putting out 600 nurses, where are they going to go when we only have a limited amount of hospitals? Now, what helps to offset this, and why I say that we're an export factory, is that Jamaica is one of the countries that I see that the recruitment agencies that they invest heavily in. One, Jamaican nurses, not going to brag on the Caribbean, we do extremely well when we're recruited and we're placed overseas. We're the nurses that know how to work with nothing. If a bed is not working, we can just use a box where the medical supplies come out of and prop up the bed. If you don't have a pole to put up your drip, you know that you get a gauze and you just tie it up and hold it up. And we don't complain about anything. And I've heard managers and persons in the States talk about it. The Jamaican nurses, they work extremely well and they don't complain. And it's the same thing when we matriculate and we go overseas. You don't hear us complaining. Now, with regards to that, the agencies, and we speak English. That's our first language. And they love that because English is a requirement to many of these first world countries. So when they recruit heavily. I heard one time that somebody was on the plane and they were a recruiter and somebody in immigration saw them and they told them that they're coming to Jamaica for nurses. Now they asked them how many nurses that you want. The person said 5,000. So with regards to that, if they keep pulling nurses per year in terms of recruitment, that amount decreases and a space is created for that nurse to enter when a nurse is recruited and goes overseas. So once nurses are recruited and we export them, they spend 2 years in the system and they move on. Then nurses can enter the system. And that's how I believe a system is created and why we're the export factory. Export to me, because in 4 years at a university, your university holds you for 4 years, put out that after 4 years, that group is put out. You then spend 2 years in a hospital, the minimum, because that's what the company state. And then after that, a space is created. Now, what is happening now is visa retrogression. And for those who don't know, many first world countries, especially the United States, is on a pause. COVID-19, that's when the floodgates opened. A lot of persons were recruited because they had an increased demand. So they created a supply. They pulled the nurses and said, we want more. Now that surplus became so much, they have a backlog. So what is happening now is a decrease in the number of nurses that are leaving. And if you have a decrease from an export factory in the number of nurses that are leaving, there's no space created. So if for me, I always tell people, if nurses before me who trained before me did not leave the system, I could not get a space to enter. It's a cycle. I think it's something that I probably may draw sometime and share later. It's a cycle. Train in the university for 4 years, you are then graduated and then go to a hospital 2 years. Then after that, 2 years, you're recruited, you move on, and then somebody else comes in and the system continues over and over. And that is one of the reasons why I believe that the new grad nurses aren't getting jobs, because we're having now a pause in the amount of nurses that are leaving, so no space is created. One person leave, then another nurse can come in and enter and get that space. So that's a major issue too. They're now stating that there's probably some problems with the budget or the economy. But during my time when I graduated, that's when the floodgates opened and that's when more nurses were graduating. There was also a pause with visa retrogression and the nurses left, so you got a space. Now, I see in the article that they were stating that we lack specialized trained nurses. Yes, that may be an issue. We lack specialized trained nurses. Many of them, there's a lot of caveats to that. We lack the specialized training, but are we paying them enough for them to stay? And I think our approach to training needs to change, because if the nurse says, she goes to them and said, okay, we don't need general trained nurses, we need specialized trained nurses. In Jamaica, everybody is a general trained nurse and then you become specialized. So how can the nurse get the experience that she needs to get specialized? You have to allow her to enter the system. So if you're having that problem, instead of recruiting from overseas those specialized nurses to come in, why not develop a program that I see that they have overseas? Overseas, you have where nurses can immediately leave their programs of nursing and they can go into nurse grad or residency programs. So a nurse can immediately go into ICU once she leaves her university. She can then train in, I think, nephrology. You can go anywhere, but Jamaica's system is a bit different. You have to go to the general place first and then apply to go into the specialized training. And I think if we kind of adopted that approach, yes, if we do it, they're still going to leave. But if you lack nurses at the moment and you're waiting on specialized trained nurses and you can't get them, train the new grads and allow them to go into residency programs. And that's something I think could work. What you guys think? I believe that is something that could work if we allow them to go into residency programs and learn on the job. Learn on the job. And that's one approach that I think will work, and pay them while they're on the job. Pay them while they're on the job. The next thing too is that gone are the days when I recall when we had specialized training. Back then, it was totally different. Nurses can tell you that you had wait lists for nurses to enter into specialized training areas. Back then, I don't know if it still happens, it was the managers who had to determine who would go to study. And they would do when you can go study. They will say that you can't study now because another nurse before you put in their application, so you're not allowed to study right now. So we have to remember those days, and I remember those days quite well. So a good nurse will be there on the unit waiting to enter and can't enter because guess what? They say somebody put in the application before you. You just came to the unit, so you can't apply now. You have somebody there before you. So a lot of nurses were on wait lists to go into training for specialized nursing, and that caused a big problem. Nurses must get frustrated. A lot of them even decided to leave because many of us are young professionals and you want to grow. And in Jamaica, we're very ambitious. Across the world, everybody is too, but very ambitious. You want to move up, and persons don't like to stay one place. And imagine a nurse sitting down waiting for 5 years. I met a nurse once who told me that she was on a wait list for 10 years. And I had to look at her and I said, "What else are you waiting for?" Because we clearly can't see the answer. There are so many people who had stories with this, and that was back then. But when the floodgates opened again and a lot of people decided to leave, that's when an approach was changed and more people started to get the opportunity to go back to school and study. So I strongly believe that approach needs to be studied and needs to be adjusted, and we can have changes in the system. So we do have our guest online right now, and she is a new grad. Michaela, are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Are you hearing me?
Yes, I am. Hold on, let me remove this. All right, so we're on live right now on YouTube now. Kayla is a new grad nurse and she graduated. She's going to tell us a bit about herself, and she's one of the nurses of the many few who are still waiting on getting a job. So,
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Well, good morning. It's still morning. My
yeah,
name is Michaela Fuller, past student of the University of Technology, Jamaica, graduated in November 2024.
right. So you graduated in November 2024, and have you been? How has the job market before we reach? How has the job market been for you?
Very challenging, very saturated, very complex, a bit disappointing. It's different than what we were told about in school or what we were told to expect in school, because we would have been on practicum and seen the shortage, seen the need,
Mm-hmm.
seen the demand. So it's very daunting to know that you have to wait so long and you know that there's a need.
Yeah. And did you take student loans?
Yes,
Right. And I'm sure student loan is already requesting their payments
they'll begin requesting in September.
September and still waiting on a job. I'm
Right.
sure this was not expected because I remember when in university they normally say one of the persons that is sure of a job is a nurse.
True. And a lot of persons find it hard to believe that nurses actually have to wait so long.
Yeah.
But as I said, we weren't told these things while in school. It was always, oh, hurry up and finish. We need the nurses and whatever. The reality wasn't shown to us until after everything.
Yeah. And it's almost a year now since you have not been able to get a job.
Right.
And have you applied like to all the major hospitals in Jamaica?
Well, no, not every single one.
Right. So I think that's an approach that we need to take. And I remember doing a webinar. When I did a webinar, I think I could show you guys that we did a webinar and I met with the new grad nurses. And this was one of the questions that I raised with them. Have you applied everywhere? And I think that was something that was lacking. And they did state no. And in the article, they did state that some persons may not want to extend their reach based on where they live. But I can tell you, wherever the job is, probably you may need to go and find it. Don't just limit yourself to one area. I know many persons want to work in like the metropolitan area, get as much as possible as in terms of skills, but you have to open your reach as much as possible too.
And another thing, we weren't really told that there were other opportunities outside of the traditional hospital setting. For example, hotel nursing or working anywhere outside of the hospital. We weren't really told that in school.
Mhm.
So you kind of leave having your mind fixated on working in a hospital.
Yeah, that is true. I always say it's a system where the hospital, the university trains the nurses for the hospital, and then you go to the hospital and work. The system is, it's up to us to determine where you want to go and just look outside. But a nurse can literally work anywhere. And when we had the webinar, we actually talked about that. But in terms of job prospect, have you found anything other than nurse related in terms of offsetting the fees that you have incurred while going to school?
Well, I've heard of persons who had to begin working in other industries, for example, the call centers, or probably working as a nurse but not as a registered nurse to
Hmm.
begin, offsetting the expenses until you get through with what you have studied for.
Okay. And this is not just, this is when you're in a call center, you're not working as a nurse.
No, well, I didn't go to a call center, but the persons that I'm aware of, they worked in some medical tele telehealth thing, but not as an RN. I'm not. I don't think so.
Okay. A question I wanted to ask you, have you explored like doing volunteerism?
Well, no, no. It
All right, that's
crossed
another
my
area that we
mind
can.
because I was hearing that health centers typically want persons with more experience. So I was saying, if the hospitals are not hiring, how do they expect you to get that experience? So it had crossed my mind to say, well, probably I have to do some volunteer hours first.
Right. That's another option that you can take too. If you're applying to places and you're not getting an opportunity, not getting an interview, you can put your foot in through volunteerism. I know some persons may say, you need money, but sometimes if that's the last resort that you have to do, that's a way of getting your foot in through the door. You're helping, you're giving back, and when they see that you're a good candidate, that's how you can start networking. And once they have an opening, you can actually get an opportunity for a job there. Now, I know it's hard, it's not easy, and nobody wants to leave university and then to be sitting at home. But it's not only nurses, a lot of persons may face that dilemma. But nursing is a field that is supposed to be in high demand. But one of the things but before we touch on that, I wanted people to understand too, not only student loan that you have incurred over a 4-year term. Remember that nurses also do practicums, and I've talked about this. With the practicums, I'm sure you weren't paid for that.
No.
Right. But I normally say it's free labor. You're not given a stipend. You have to
No.
find taxi fare to go to clinicals, and then you have to look at also your living arrangement, whether you've
Right.
lived on campus, find food, find rent, pay books, all of that. So it's a lot to incur, especially for nurses. So when persons leave the university and they're automatically able to get a job, it offsets so much. Another question I want to ask you though, in the plight of all of this, how do you feel like in terms of do you feel that this is something that you should change your profession or adjust the places that you're applying to?
Um. Well, it's hard to say you'd want to change your profession after studying for 4 years and after choosing it, because we weren't forced into it. You would have had to make a conscious choice to say, okay, I want to become a nurse. So it's kind of hard to think that way, but definitely it brings you to the reality of having to adjust the places that you are looking into, especially
Right.
starting out. And as I said, everybody wants experience, and where's the experience supposed to come from if the main place or the mainstay, which is the hospital, is not actively hiring? So it kind of forces you to think otherwise.
Yeah. And do you know of anyone that has had success in getting a job that in your batch?
Oh yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so it's not everyone.
No, it's not everyone, but there's
Okay.
still a significant amount.
Yes. So one thing that I can remember, I don't know if you had joined the webinar that we had with the new grad nurses. So we talked about applying everywhere, and something that university may not teach us is marketability. You have to learn how to market yourself as much as possible when you leave university and even before you leave university. One of the biggest thing I always tell persons that I speak to, start networking on your university grounds before you leave. Extracurricular activities, join those organizations. Many of them are connected to bigger organizations when you're ready to leave university. And that can set you up in getting access to jobs. It's not only one place. And when I mean marketability, you have to look at your degree as a tool, a tool that is going to get you a job, and then you are the person now that is going to add value. So any department, any organization that you walk into, a nurse is always needed, and I always tell people that you just have to know how to add value. There are so many skills on your degree that you can learn to monetize and make money from it and even get a job, but you have to learn that. And that's something that we talked about in the webinar also. But in light of not being able to get a job in Jamaica, I know it must have crossed your mind. Have you opened your mind to looking overseas for opportunities?
Well, no, because as I said, we were trained here, and the best place to get your experience would be here. So that hasn't crossed my mind at all.
Right. I understand, and you do need experience before you leave your country, and it's very important also.
Right.
However, I've always told nurses too that experience is good, and I implore giving back to your country. But sometimes this is was a webinar that we had, and I know you were there also. Experience is good, and it's very important to give back to your country. But if it means that you're going to be sitting down waiting for a year and more years on top of that, and there's no opportunity, you have to expand your reach. You have to think globally. And one of the things that spoke about in the webinar too was that we need to, once you finish university, take your NCLEX. That gives you marketability too. In terms of a global reach, if you're not getting opportunities in your country and you have tried every single thing, expand your reach and look outside globally, because there are opportunities there also. And
Right.
while you're doing that, going back to school and studying, you still can gain the experience through volunteerism or working at a location that may not need necessarily nursing and working towards getting your NCLEX. I advocate in giving back, in serving the country too. But if you realize that after the end that you have spent so much and invested and you're not getting anything, sometimes it's good to look at a global perspective.
That's true.
So since the last time that we have talked, have you gotten any feedback from those places that you have applied to?
Not as yet.
Right. So I implore you to think about volunteerism, do follow-ups, communicate with them, and expand your reach. Don't just look at the hospital systems. I gave you some listings already of the places that you can look to, and
Right.
expanding your reach and possibly looking at taking the NCLEX. It is sad. I wouldn't advocate for this to say, look outside. I always advocate, serve your country first, then, get your experience and leave. But if you're sitting at home for almost a year and your loans are interest is adding to that, and you have bills to pay, self-preservation is key. So expanding your reach comes with that, and also looking out for opportunities in terms of Caribbean too, small islands. At the end of the day, you invested in yourself and you deserve to get that return on your investment. It is sad. And I hope that, as a country, we can do more for our nurses, especially our organizations, that advocate for us. I believe that they themselves need to be doing more too, in terms of the voice that they have. I'm going to say this, I believe NAJ should be doing more too, have webinars and conferences online to help the nurses in terms of getting jobs. You reach out to different employers and say, how many spaces do you have? Oh, we have these nurses in waiting. When can they get jobs? Partner with overseas associations to help them too, because I did see where the president noted that they're not opposed to international recruitment. So I hope moving forward from this, we're still going to be keeping in contact and in communication, and we keep posted. Where I'm working with Michaela and trying to see if we can get an opportunity for her at the moment. So in terms of your waiting, one last question I'd like to ask. How has it been for you mentally?
As I said, a bit disappointing, but sometimes you have to try to find things to take your mind off it and try not to dwell in the fact that you are not so much, but try to stay positive and remember that this is something that you worked towards and you trained for, so it will come.
Yes, so time is a master. I saw in the article, and I did ask you if you applied everywhere,
Right.
and you said no. So that's one thing that I advise you to do: apply every single where, knock on every single door. One must open.
Right.
So I've used that approach also, and not just for hospital systems, some non-traditional areas where you can find nurse-related jobs and where a nurse would be needed. Sometimes we look at things like everybody's going one place and there's actually a door opened towards the places that other persons aren't looking. So expand your reach, be marketable, try to volunteer as much as possible in some places, such as either the health centers, doctors' offices, and expand your reach looking into the Caribbean or even looking on a global perspective. It is sad, but keep expanding yourself and keep learning and try as much as possible until a door opens up for you.
That is so true. And thanks for your advocacy as well.
No problem. So I think we're almost at the end. We're at 12:46. I want to thank you so much for joining us, and we'll keep in touch. Thanks to everyone that has been here and has been listening to us. And we hope the job prospects for Jamaica improve soon. And one of the biggest thing that I have been speaking about was that visa retrogression is playing a big part to this. It is less nurses leaving the system, less opportunities for nurses to enter. If other persons want to debate me on this, we can. Let's agree to disagree. But once that floodgate opens and those nurses leave, then more nurses can actually enter into the system. As we spoke about earlier, Jamaica is an export factory, highly sought after. So, when you have a slowdown of the process, it leads to a backlog and less nurses leaving the system. So Michaela left us there. And I hope everyone enjoyed this discussion as we talked about the problems that we're having back home in Jamaica with regards to new grad nurses not being in jobs. It is sad after studying 4 years, not being able to enter the system that you want to. I've had colleagues who had suffered from that too, but not necessarily nursing, but actually changed back their degrees in like that they were waiting too long and could not get a job. Opportunities are there, as I spoke with Michaela, but you have to expand your reach and learn how to market yourself. Whether it means starting a business on your own or expanding your reach globally, there are opportunities out there. I always advocating giving back and giving back service to your country. But at the end of the day, if that investment that you made cannot be seen on your returns, you have to take matters into your own hands. All right, guys. Thank you so much for everyone that tuned in, to everyone that has watched. What you guys think? What do you think of my analysis of the plight that is happening in Jamaica? Do you think it is solely visa retrogression, or what else can it be? What advice can you give to Michaela to help her in her journey in terms of getting a job? Any other advice that you can give, we'll be happy, and we'll be happy to share them with her, and we'll keep in touch with her. So if you're watching this right now and you're interested to work with us, you can send us a call for coaching and mentorship, and we'll be happy to work with you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and tune into another video that we have coming up with Empowered RN.